Good morning, friends. So this is Linda Stacy reporting to my Living Blueprints community page. But the reason that I am recording today is actually as part of a group I've been co-chairing with NSA New England, National Speakers Association New England. We weren't able to get to some content over the weekend, so I thought I would record here, and that potentially there are people within this group that might also find some value in what I'm about to do. So we're going to be talking about 12-week plans or 90-day pushes, and as we know, there's nothing new under the sun, and the multi-level marketing community has done this kind of thing for years. And then there was a book published a few years ago by Brian Moran called The 12-Week Year, and basically projecting out about 3 months in terms of goals and planning can be much more tangible, and you can really create some great success by only looking out 12 weeks. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to use an example from my business. But even if you don't have a business, this is something that can be applied to your work life if you're managing projects, but also if there's something in your personal life that you want to achieve. So if you're trying to achieve a fitness goal or eat differently or something like that. I mean, putting a 5K on your calendar 3 months out and paying for it absolutely can drive the same kind of success. So in terms of what we had going for NSA, all of this is about marrying dreams with reality, right? So we've had a lot exposed to us. We've had a lot of ideas for ways that we can go forward, and then how do we actually make this all happen? It's a lot of content. Overall, we are pushing this 90-day push. We're developing structures to support us in order to mitigate procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, all of the things that kind of get in our way. And I'm sure you could come up with other things that get in the way. If you don't have any issues with any of those things, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe your planning is working really well for you. Whatever it is, that's fine. I'm sure that some of you can benefit from this. So my very first suggestion in this plan is to block time to plan. And I mean maybe 3 or 4 hours. And I mean even maybe going someplace special to do it. Last year in June, there was a very nice day, and I spent time at the beach, and I had no other time commitments that day, and it really gave me a lot of time to think and to sketch, and I had a few books with me too for inspiration. But other ideas, it might be nice to get out of the house. I find sometimes hotel lobbies can be wonderful, especially in Boston. I mean, you can go and sit in the Ritz in their beautiful lobby and do your work there for hours and no one will bother you. And just think about the feeling that it'll give you to be sitting in one of those really nice hotels. So make a plan of it, set it in your calendar, and really give yourself time to think about the next steps for your business. So the second step is to create these anchor commitments. When I was using the fitness example, I was saying, put a 5K on the calendar and pay for it. The example I'll use is when I ran my first public workshop. I actually was going to run the public workshop because I was signed up to do a similar workshop for an association, and I wanted to run the entire thing through once before I did it in front of the association. So it was a good opportunity. So I put that on the calendar and I started to advertise it, which absolutely means that it's going to happen. There has to be some kind of accountability factor to these anchor commitments, or else they're likely not going to happen. So for you, it could be your book, it could be other things, but attach an anchor commitment to it. When I was writing the book, I was going to be at a trade show, and I really wanted that book to be done in time for the trade show. So that was a definite anchor point that helped me stick to my commitment. The second thing you're going to do is brainstorm. You're going to sit down and brainstorm everything that has to be done for that workshop. So some of the things that were on my brainstorming list, I needed to decide where I was going to post it. Eventually, I decided to use Eventbrite, which could handle the registration and payment for me. I had to do some research on pricing. I had to create a marketing campaign. That's when I started using Facebook Live. I created a series and I put those dates on the calendar. And when I started the Facebook campaign, I said at the beginning of it when I was going to be reporting, so it was a done deal. I had to do it on those days. I also had to develop the content. I had to write a workbook. So all of these things represent things that had to happen within that 3 months. So getting down all of the major things that have to happen. Now, in addition to that, you really need to brainstorm each one of those. The workbook, all the steps that are going to be involved. How was I going to execute it once it was written? Was I going to use Staples? Was I going to use some other? Was I going to do it myself? Try to print it and bind it myself? All of these things that take sometimes more time than we consider if we're not laying it all out and making a plan. Also, when you're brainstorming, you do have to think about other commitments. Sometimes we create these huge things, and what else is going on in your life? It's important to keep those all in mind. We all have chores, we have relationships, we have our social lives, and all of these things need to be weighed in. Now, once I have everything brainstormed, I attempt to put it somewhere electronic. So it might be a spreadsheet, it could be Evernote or something like that. I'm doing the entire initial process, though, with a good notebook and my colored pens. I love colored pens with my Sharpies. I also have some thicker ones that I use for headers. But this really helps me with the creative process, and I really enjoy pens and paper. And so use tools that you enjoy. For me, this is very much a part of the process. If you're just fine with electronic, that's fine too. But I do put it in the Excel later or the Evernote so that I can refer back to it wherever I am. So getting back to that. So everything's going to be laid out somewhere electronically. And now's the important part. You really need to refer back to this regularly. And I recommend a weekly preview and a weekly review. So the preview for me is looking out at the next 7 days. This can happen on a Thursday. It can happen on the weekend. It could even happen Monday morning, depending on your schedule. So my process, and your process could be a little variant, of course, is that I look at my electronic calendar and for all the commitments, all of the appointments and such that I have, and I actually then put them into a paper calendar. And so I'm going to hold up my paper calendar. This is the planner pad. You can Google planner pad to find this, and it does have the actual days in it. And meaning the actual calendar days. So I have Monday, the 15th of April in here. You can also get them blank so that you could fill in as you go. And mine starts in April because that's when I kind of started using Planner Pad a couple of years ago, but you can get them for various times. I really like the tool. I start to jot down the things that have to happen. I consider sleep, I consider meal prep, I consider all of the things that sometimes we don't count up, these things that take time that are very, very important. So once everything's in there, my chores are in there, I have commitments to the household and other things, then I can see where the chunks of time are for me to do other types of creation. For me personally, one of the big chunks of time is my time on the train 3 days a week when I'm commuting into the city. So find whatever chunks you can in order to now execute this plan, right? So you've got your whole plan laid out in your Excel spreadsheet, and what do you need to work on first? So as you're doing your preview, you're looking at that Excel and you're prioritizing and figuring out what needs the most lead time, and you begin to block out the time according to all those brainstormed steps that you have in the Excel spreadsheet. You're actually going to put those into the paper calendar. This is, again, my process. If you're just jotting it down in a notebook, that's fine too. But you become very deliberate. So when you have time to work, when you have the 2 to 3 hour chunk available, you know exactly where to jump in. You're not sitting there wondering what you should do, whatever else. That's where the procrastination comes in. That's where the overwhelm comes in. You are locked in. You know what the next steps are. And as you go through this and you do it more and more, you realize where you need to be flexible and where you need to really stick to what you have in there. So after I've got everything in, now you can begin to execute. You can live your week. So when you do your preview for the next week, before you actually begin to preview 7 days later, I recommend going back. Look back at the last 7 days. How well did your plan work? And this, again, is just time to calibrate, to rejigger, not to judge yourself, not to lambast. It's also time to celebrate. What did you do well? What were the awesome accomplishments? It's very, very key. If you can schedule, if you can block time for preview and review, I promise, things will begin to transform for you. All right, so with the review, yes, you're going to celebrate. You're going to notice what was too much, where you just kind of overstated or you didn't realize how much time something was actually going to take. You're going to recalibrate, and you're going to get better and better at planning as you go. So some of the tools that I use, I've already mentioned, right? I use Evernote. I use colored pens. I've always got a lot around. They help me to create. They help me to feel inspired. I like good notebooks depending on what you're doing at the time. I have this one from a conference. I love this. It's Millipore put it out for the Mass Conference of Women. But I find good notebooks. I keep them. That helps me just to take notes as I go, and especially when I'm in planning zone. So as I was saying, my planner pad is definitely a key tool that I use. I use Excel. I use Google Docs to some extent. Of course, I use Dropbox, and I love being able to access these things from any computer or from my device. So what tools do you use? Will you begin to use any new tools? And my call to action for you would be to schedule at least half a day to do some really fun creative time, some planning. Either go to that hotel, go to the beach when the weather gets nicer, go to your front porch, whatever makes sense. Put that time on the calendar and really think about some anchor commitments that you could set out 12 weeks from now and what needs to happen along the way. And then execute your success. And be in touch if you have any questions, or if there are places where you're just running into walls, or where procrastination or anxiety or overwhelm is really taking control. All right, we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.